My mother-in-law poured something strange into my drink when she thought I wasn't looking. "A special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law," she said with a smile. I thanked her and discreetly switched glasses with her husband, who always criticized my career. 45 minutes later, everything changed. "My name is Ryan Matthews, I'm 32 years old, and I'm an independent photographer living in Austin, Texas. I built my business from scratch: weddings, events, and magazine features. I'm good at what I do, really good. But for my in-laws, Stephen and Victoria, especially Victoria, what I do has never been enough." "How's that little photography hobby going?" Stephen would ask at family dinners, not even trying to hide his disdain. He was an investment banker, the type of man who measures success in square footage and stock options. Every Sunday dinner at their house was the same routine. Victoria worried about her daughter while Stephen interrogated me about my finances. My wife Caroline would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology for her parents. That week I was photographing a wildlife project. Days of trekking through Texas wilderness to capture mountain lion images for National Geographic. I was exhausted when I arrived home, but Caroline insisted we couldn't miss her mother's birthday dinner. "It's just a few hours," she promised. I should have listened to the knot in my stomach. When Victoria cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes gleamed strangely before handing me the drink. There was a slight tremor in her fingers when she said, "I made this special just for you." Something wasn't right. I just didn't know how wrong it was about to become. Caroline and I met 6 years ago at an art exhibition where my work was being featured. She was finishing her master's in environmental science, and I was just starting to build my reputation. We connected instantly. She understood my need to capture the world through a lens, and I admired her passion for protecting it. Her parents, well, that was another story entirely. From our first meeting, Stephen made it clear he expected someone different for his daughter. Someone with an office job, retirement plan, company car, someone exactly like him. Victoria was more subtle, complimenting my photos but asking when I planned to settle into something stable. She'd invite me to family events but introduce me as just the photographer instead of her son-in-law. For years I tried winning them over, bringing expensive wine to dinners, showing published work, mentioning important clients. Nothing changed their perception that I was just a phase in their daughter's life, a phase she'd outgrow. Last Christmas I overheard Victoria on the phone. "Caroline could have married Dr. Andrew Miller, you know. Orthopedic surgeon, comes from money. But she chose the creative type." The way she paused before saying creative made the word sound like a disease. Stephen was even more direct. When we announced we were trying for a baby, he pulled me aside. "Kids are expensive, son. Maybe think about a real job before bringing one into the world." I never told Caroline these things. She loved her parents despite their flaws, and I didn't want to force her to choose sides. So I smiled, shook Stephen's hand firmly at every visit, complimented Victoria's cooking, and kept my thoughts to myself. But there were signs I should have taken more seriously. Like when Victoria asked Caroline to help in the kitchen every time I spoke about a successful project. Or when she accidentally left me out of family photos. Or that time Stephen suggested therapy for Caroline's impulsive decisions while looking directly at me. I ignored it all, thinking time would bring acceptance. I was wrong. On Friday of Victoria's birthday dinner, I returned wind-burned with a memory card full of images that would pay our rent for 3 months. I was exhausted, but showered, put on a dress shirt, and took my wife to her parents' house. Dinner started normally. Stephen bragging about a recent deal, Victoria obsessing over table decorations, Caroline's brother Mark and his wife Patricia making polite conversation. I drank a beer and counted minutes until we could leave. After the main course, Victoria announced, "I made my famous dessert." She disappeared into the kitchen. I offered to help carry glasses. That's when I saw her separate 2 glasses from the others. When I entered, she quickly added something from a small vial into one of them. It had no color, no smell. She hid the vial the instant she heard my footsteps. "Oh, Ryan, let me carry those," she said, too animated. "This one's for you. Special recipe for my favorite son-in-law." My throat tightened. The glass had an almost imperceptible film floating on the surface, catching the light. Let me help you carry these, I replied, taking both glasses. In the dining room, Stephen was checking his phone, barely looked up when I approached with the glasses. I placed the tampered glass in front of him instead of keeping it for myself. I watched as he drank, making up some excuse about preferring water with dessert. 45 minutes later, Stephen was pale, sweating, rushing to the bathroom. Violent sounds of his illness echoed through the house. Victoria's face lost all color when she realized what had happened. Our eyes met across the table, and in that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. My mother-in-law tried to poison me, and she knew that I knew. I didn't react, didn't confront her, just ate my chocolate cake while Caroline rushed to check on her father. In the chaos that followed, Stephen insisted it must have been food poisoning, and Victoria stammered about bad seafood. I quietly pocketed the untouched glass. Something had changed inside me. The anger I felt wasn't hot or explosive. It was cold, deliberate. I wouldn't let this pass, but I also wouldn't confront them directly. I would make them face exactly who they were. Monday after the dinner, I took the glass to Robert, a former client who runs ToxLab Dallas, specializing in toxicology analysis. Personal or professional? He asked when I explained what I needed. Family matters, I replied. 3 days later, he called. There were benzodiazepines in that drink, nothing lethal, but enough to knock someone unconscious for hours, maybe cause memory loss. Where'd you get this? I thanked him and requested a written report, but didn't answer his question. That night, I told Caroline I wanted to skip Sunday dinners for a while, explaining I needed to focus on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed, but understood. I didn't tell her about the test results. Not yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I did some research. Victoria had Xanax prescriptions from 3 different doctors, doubling and tripling doses for years. There were also rumors around town. Strange behavior at neighbors' parties, accusations of jewelry theft at the Dallas Country Club. Stories her family worked hard to bury. I compiled everything and waited for the right moment. It came when Caroline mentioned her mother needed photos for a social media profile. She specifically asked if you could take them, Caroline said, surprised. I agreed. The following Saturday, I arrived at their house alone, camera bag in one hand, sealed envelope in the other. Victoria was waiting, dressed and made up perfectly. Stephen's at the office, she explained. Before we start, I said quietly, I thought you'd like to see this. I handed her the envelope with the toxicology report and prescription printouts. Her hands shook as she read. This is ridiculous, she whispered. We'll never know what would have happened, I interrupted. What I don't know is why. Her face hardened. You're not good enough for my daughter. Never will be. A man should provide security, not photos and daydreams. But that wasn't going to hurt you, just make you sick and maybe miss that ridiculous gallery opening you've been talking about for months. I wanted to show Caroline you're not reliable. I let that sink in. Here's what happens next, I said finally. I'm going to tell Stephen what you did, and then you'll both start treating me with respect. Not because you've changed your mind about me, but because the alternative is Caroline discovering exactly who her parents are. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. She'd never believe you over us. I picked up my camera bag. Maybe not, I replied, but she'll believe the lab report, the medical prescriptions, and the neighbors you've alienated. Are you willing to bet your relationship with your daughter on that? I left without taking a single photo. That night, Victoria called Caroline crying, claiming I'd behaved inappropriately during the session, saying I was hostile and threatening. When Caroline confronted me, I couldn't hide the truth anymore. I showed her everything. The lab report, the prescriptions, even text messages from her mother that had grown increasingly hostile over the years. My mother wouldn't do this, she kept repeating, but her voice lacked conviction. The next day, Caroline confronted her parents. I wasn't there, but when she came home, her eyes were red from crying. Dad says it's all a misunderstanding, she said quietly. That you're trying to create a wedge between us because you feel insecure about your career. I just held her. I'd been expecting this. What do you think? I asked. She didn't answer, just crawled into bed and turned away from me. I pulled her back, but somehow, I'd fallen deeper into their trap. Now I was the villain in their story, and they'd managed to plant doubts in the only person whose opinion truly mattered to me. For 2 weeks, Carolina barely spoke to me. She went to her parents' house alone, came back with red eyes and fresh doubts. I threw myself into work, spending long hours in the studio, waiting for the storm to pass. Then a package arrived for me with no return address, just my name written on top, in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "You should see this. Patricia." The drive contained security footage from Stephen and Victoria's house, and everything was about to change forever.